Part of experiencing new Christmas traditions with Monica this year was with the movies. My family's go-to movie is The Christmas Story, about a little boy named Ralphie whose quest is to get a Red Ryder BB gun. And although everyone warns him that he will shoot his eye out, he still continues to press on. Monica's go-to movie is It's a Wonderful Life. The young man, George Bailey, wants to see the world and feels like that the town that he is stuck in is holding him back from his quest. In the mist, he meets a girl and shares those wonderful lines, "What do you want? Do you want the moon? Just say the word and I'll tie a lasso on it and pull it down." Yet in the movie, this fear that's rattling in his head to continue on his quest of going beyond. But in the end, his heart wins. He changes course. He finds a different way of living out the fullness of life. And it's in that different approach in which it becomes wonderful. The arrival of the Magi marks the end of Christmas. We have concluded our 12 days of that season when these men who study by profession the stars and the moon have come to visit the Holy Family in their cave. We take a step back before movies and electricity, and we remember the time of Jesus in which the stars were part of the entertainment for all those who sat in the darkness of the world. We especially think about those who studied the stars, the Magi, who were the astrologers of their day, the experts of all of that heavenly scene, as well as that common set of shepherds who stayed up all night tending their flock in the fields. Darkness that came upon them was simply part of their day. And yet it's the moon, it's the stars that gave the beauty of God's creation to all those every night, all around the globe. And so, yes, the Magi take notice when they see this brilliant star that they have been waiting for, a star of David that would eventually take them to where the shepherds had been, to meet Jesus in the manger, to meet the Son of God in the simplest of conditions. This radiant star bursting through the night tells them that all the predictions might be coming true of how the Messiah was to be born. And so they come, as would be tradition, to Herod to share the news of what they had seen. I think it's likely that they met at Starbucks, a local coffee place, because they wouldn't want to raise suspicion of anyone. But as they tell Herod what they had seen, he surely just spits his coffee all over the table. He tries to recover. He tries to hide his nervousness, his fear that someone who's more powerful than him has been born into the world. Someone he might have to share his kingdom with, or even more so, lose his kingdom to. His quest of keeping control might slip away. Before the Magi leave to go follow the star, he goes back to his place of command, gathers the wisest scribes and Pharisees around him to give even greater counsel. What does this mean? And they remind him of what the prophet Micah had shared before that we heard in our gospel today, that Bethlehem would be the place where the Messiah would be born. And Herod broods and broods because he was the ruler of Israel. And yet, as Micah had shared in all those old words, that a new shepherd was coming to Israel. So like most rulers, he asked them to go and to come and report back to him. People have always liked reports, so they go. And when they go, they give him those gifts that we hear over and over again, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And it draws us to the last lines of the prophet of Isaiah, Isaiah who was the teacher of Micah, who says that they shall bring gold and frankincense, and then they can proclaim praise to the Lord. And although the Magi go, because they're ordered to, they change course before they return home. And as they follow the star and they get to the place to where Jesus is laying, as our gospel tells us today, it is in that moment that they are overwhelmed with joy. So much joy that their own kingly status brings into fruition those words of our Psalter, that all kings will bow down before him. All nations will do him service. It is the service of the Magi, not just to their own nations, but to all humanity, would be not returning to Herod. They left instead to their own country by another way because they knew of Herod's fear, they knew of his insecurity, they knew his dangerous tendency to destroy anyone who might challenge his quest for more power. God's story had started in Jesus. God was about to unfold something brand new, and it was more wonderful than they could ever imagine. Herod could not control the story that had begun. Herod thought that he had hung the moon, that he owned everything, and yet God had lassoed it and brought it down to share creation again with all of God's people. For those who can see, we can simply look at artwork in our church. If you look at the mosaic who's back here in this corner, we have Isaiah. Isaiah giving all those words of prophecy to Micah, who's here in the middle. And it brings all of us to the nativity mosaic here, where above it we see that star shining bright. This whole progression, that everything that had been predicted, a birth in Bethlehem, a descendant of David, and that a star would guide them, had come to fruition. And Herod knew that his time was up. What does this mean for us today? It reminds us that there's always darkness in the world around us, and sometimes the darkness that we have in our own lives is only unique to us because it's part of our own story. Many times darkness is shared with others in a greater sense of tragedy. But it's in the darkness in which the light of Christ burst into the world, in which that faint sense of hope comes into the life, reminding us that we are not alone. God is always with us. We are always connected, like to that night sky. And so we listen in those words of Isaiah of when we find ourselves in the darkness. Isaiah gives that perfect instruction to simply lift up your eyes and look around. Epiphany is a season about seeking out the light, the little stars. Epiphany gives us notice to the faint light of God breaking through the darkness around us in new ways to take us to new experiences where we, like the Magi, can be overwhelmed with joy. I believe that it's often the people in our life that give that little light to us. The guiding stars who are always around us, helping us to get to a new place. And so the question comes down to this. If it is a self-quest, if it is a controlled quest, we might ask, what do you want? And as we worry about our wants, we find ourselves slipping into that arena with Herod's fear of losing control of our own story. Yet God promises us a wonderful life if we instead ask the question, what does God want for us? And then to go and to seek and to, yes, return home, but to return home changed and in a new way that we live out this life that we have been blessed with, celebrating that light has come into us again so that we can be part of that celebration. Amen.